Yeah, what up? I'm going to read some verses out of Proverbs. And I'm going to start with Proverbs chapter 30. Okay. Chapter 30, verse 10. All right. Accuse not a servant unto his master, lest he curse thee, and thou be found guilty. There is a generation that curseth their father, and doth not bless their mother. There is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, and yet is not washed from their filthiness. There is a generation, oh how lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. There is a generation whose teeth are as swords, and their jaw teeth as knives, to devour the poor from off the earth, and the needy from among men. The horse leech hath 2 daughters, crying, Give, give. There are 3 things that are never satisfied, yea, 4 things say not, it is enough. The grave and the barren womb, the earth that is not filled with water, and the fire that saith not, it is enough. The eye that mocketh at his father, and despiseth to obey his mother, the ravens of the valley shall pick it out, and the young eagles shall eat it. There be 3 things which are too wonderful for me, yea, 4 which I know not. The way of an eagle in the air, the way of a serpent upon a rock, the way of a ship in the midst of the sea, and the way of a man with a maid. Such is the way of an adulterous woman. She eateth and wipeth her mouth, and saith, I have done no wickedness. All right. So, I am going to try to get through this, and break it down and keep it short today. The poem, kind of in context with that, is the wealth of kings, the cycle of bread, the season of change, the victims of poverty, the wine of my bosom, the fruits of my loins, the years of my youth, the howls of my thoughts, the dread of the countess, the discretion of the hoard, the board of education, the rivers of my veins, the circuitry of currency, the arteries of the city, the chapters of my keep, the streets bathed in blood. And he heard Abel's voice cry up from the ground. All right. So this verse is talking about, the verse is talking about a generation that basically I've been hitting on for quite some time, that is very self-absorbed, very narcissistic. And this generation, with this narcissism and with this being self-absorbed, has attributes that kind of pertain to greed. Okay, somebody is self-absorbed. They're, if you were thinking in a medicine, if you were thinking of science, if you were thinking of hypothetically, which I already reviewed. I don't really believe in black holes, but hypothetically, if a person was a black hole and everything around them, they just tend to consume, like there was just this void inside of them. And it's just this darkness, or this aura of darkness, that it seems like whenever you're around them, you seem to drain in energy, or they are selfish and they wouldn't give a dollar to someone in need, even if they were exceedingly wealthy. This is echoing of that generation. I don't need to really steep any deeper. For those in context that have understanding, understand certain things, but I leave the door slightly cracked, even though my experience has been horrible for the most part. I leave the door cracked, and I just have a hard time believing that an entire group or category of individuals, all right, would be one way. But there are also many other things that are working, and I'm not going to get into that, because for people who lack understanding, it could steep them into supremacy, and supremacy will steep you back into the very greed or the void nature or the black hole nature, the selfishness. And I don't believe that all are the same. I really don't. And I could be completely wrong, but at the same time, those people that you get around, and they seem to, even the ones, like, there are people who seem like they're cool with you and they're super nice, but there's just something about them that just is negative, that takes away. All right? It makes me think of like this song, you know, back in the day by Bush, called Mouth. It's a very interesting song. I think it was the soundtrack to the movie American Werewolf in Paris. It was on there. But let's I'll get into the verse there. I'll start with the poem, okay? The first part here is the wealth of kings, the cycle of bread, the season of change, the victims of poverty. All right? The wealth of kings. All right? When you think of kings, you think of like a feast. Okay? Like somebody who's having a feast. And what do they have? They have bread and wine at these feasts. And another connotation for bread is money, right? The cycle of bread. The wealth of kings, the cycle of bread. All right? This goes into the circuitry of the currency system, right? The centralized banking, like the heart, and the currency being the blood that flows through the city, but we call it bread because everybody needs bread. And we are like the little birds that sit beneath the king's table in the pyramid scheme, and we pick at the crumbs on the ground. All right? The wealth of kings, the cycle of bread, the season of change. All right? The victims of poverty. The season of change is the changing of the seasons, not only pertaining to the bread. So what would that represent? The stock market, right? The stock market and how that filters into our currency system, how well businesses do, how well businesses grow, unemployment rates, and everything else like that, right? And the victims of poverty, where are they at? Jesus Christ was a Nazarene, okay? He was a Nazarene. Now, let me tell you about the hoods. When you watch like hood life on YouTube, when you watch these vlogs and stuff, these people got all this cool slang and stuff like that. It ain't the same. A Nazarite, I mean, you talking about something, you talking about hood. When they call it something hood, like in other words, the ghetto, this is pertaining to the projects. They call them projects. Like it's still in development and somebody just left that project unfinished. They probably had dirt roads. They didn't have the luxury of streets and stuff like that here. So you got to think like poverty back in those days, it hit a little bit different. The dudes were a little bit rougher. You know what I'm saying? You're not going out there and squeezing a trigger. All right? Now I get it. Some people can't do it. All right? And that's a good thing. I'm saying back then you had to work for it, right? You may have to pick up a rock or something, bust someone in the head. That's about as deep as your weapons get. You might come across a knife or something, but you had to work for it. It was a little bit different, right? It wasn't the same thing as here. In other words, it's rough. But the season of change, and change being a connotation of What we break a dollar for, we make it change, right? We've changed that dollar, and the season of change from the stock market, like I said, trickling down in the currency system, the cycle of bread, the season of change. All right, the victims of poverty are lined in the inner cities and the ghettos and the projects, and everybody turns a blind eye to them as mayhem goes on in them streets. And the police, to a degree, they got to keep it in order. If you think about it, for the price that police get paid, a lot of those people in those cities, the cycle of bread, the pyramid scheme, how it trickles down, the black market. If you think about it, I'm not going to go too deep into it to respect all parties here, but if you think about it, it is literally MMA on a high scale. It's like a huge game for the elite and the rich to sit at that fancy table with bread and wine, the wealth of kings, the cycle of bread, the season of change, the victims of poverty. Who are the victims of poverty? Misfires, children getting struck, 11 years and younger by bullets, some sleeping in the bed. What do they call it? Like collateral damage? Imagine being a parent investing all your money into a child only to find that your child has died on the way home from school. It's like the Oregon Trail, isn't it? Have you invested all that time, all that money, diapers, milk for years, pajamas, brand new school clothes every season, every trend, that lunchbox they wanted that they had to have just to fit in, to not get ragged on. And it's like that in the hood too. You got to be on game for some reason. I don't understand. Nobody understands if you're lacking, even though they're living in the same situations. It's like that. The victims of poverty. How does that affect the psychology of that child? Walking to school, seeing the pimp, seeing the drug dealer. And where did the drugs come from? The wealth represented by the gold chains and the chains worn on slave ships. The season, the cycle of bread, the season of change. How currency flows through time and society. Is that child influenced by that gang life or by that pimp in those situations and hardships, not understanding and trying to understand life? And that child sees maybe they coming out of a single parent home, that mother working and breaking her back, barely able to stand to put food on the table. And he's got a good heart. He wants to help. But how can he do it? Well, we could put you on gang, but you got to keep your mouth shut. You see, a closed mouth gets to eat twice. That's in many connotations. You got to understand what I learned from my grandfather. That same kid grows up and you point in your accusations and you say, that man is a monster. From your corporate job and your bins. Look at the monsters you made, and these are the repercussions. And now from the suburbs, your children are going to the same blocks that you had a hand in raising. The wealth of kings, the cycle of bread, that fancy table, Christmas dinners, turkeys, bread and wine. In the streets, in the inner cities, in the ghettos, certain jobs without W-2s. Nobody can't be chicken. We know, you know we love to eat it. Our festivities is kind of different. The wealth of kings look kind of different. In order to help maybe that same person that have a hand in one place have to have a hand in that place in order to provide for their city. Maybe they're passing out turkeys. Maybe they're donating to shelters. More so than the corporate man, because everybody turned a blind eye and forgot them. Look at how they treat the homeless. They're damn near invisible. Nobody could see them, even though they're right in front of their faces with their cardboard signs with big giant letters. People forget how to read it. This is what is kind of in context, paraphrasing what I derive from this verse out of scripture. So do you look at that same drug dealer that may provide for his city an opportunity, gifts for children and things like that? Let's think about it. How hoodlum are they? Toys for tots, Meals on Wheels. Where does this free money come from? If it grows on trees, those in the inner city sure couldn't find it. Somebody had to work for it, and somebody had to work for free. Man, that's a lot of volunteers by the time it gets to the gift wrapping. And I'm just talking about the raindrops that echoes down the pipes on the side of buildings, down your gutters. Maybe you heard of them in the whistle of the winter. You had a coat on. Other people were laying on newspaper. You walked right by them. It wasn't to be offensive, but you didn't even notice. Your consideration is degrading. You're turning into a narcissist by accident, because that's the sociology and the ways of society. And you had to fit in. Got that brand new lunchbox though you going to college. Something to think about. That's breaking down that verse. So, carrying on, the victims of poverty, the screams in the streets, the barking of the gunfire. The archangels sound like helicopters flying low around your city with flashlights. Bodies floating in rivers and people asking, did you find them? Scout dogs and bloodhounds. The conversations are a little bit different depending on the tax bracket, even though we are all hypothetically the same creatures, aren't we? Some of you in the know might say no, and others might say yes. And I'm saying that we are, because we're all quite kind of evil, aren't we? No matter how good we see ourselves, we all kind of lie also, even if we don't mean to. Something to think about. The wine of my bosom, the fruits of my loins, the years of my youth, the howls of my thoughts. All right? The wine of my bosom. Okay? Wine, blood, and wine in the Bible are connotative together if you're being sanctified by the Holy Spirit. That one trying to go in the right way in time becomes a better person, meaning that their blood ripens like a grape. That is, I guess, wine is fermented. That is fermented into wine, and wine gets better as it ages. This is speaking of wisdom. The wine of my bosom. What will I teach to my children? Living in the streets of Philadelphia, on a street called Martin Luther King somewhere, on a street named Garfield, where the guns are barking out loud late at night. I might be telling my children different than those in the suburbs. Make sure your ass is home when them street lights come on. Suburban kids wouldn't know about it. We'll see them later when they become teenagers and they can't find what they're looking for around their environment. You see, the conversation's kind of different, and the wine of my bosom would be wisdom out of care and consideration by social conditioning or the erosion of my character living in certain demographics. The fruits of my loins goes with that verse, as I just mentioned. The fruit of your loins, fruit of the loom, is underwear, your children. Your fruits are your children. Fruits can be connotated also of works.
A woman, when she has a child, the water breaks and she goes into labor, work, and the fruit of that would be the children. All right? So the wine of my bosom will be the wisdom that I'm given to the fruits of my loins, the years of my youth. It won't be boy meets world, that whole Topanga situation. These are lofty things that people take for granted. People in the streets never heard about it. Gotta get home before the street lights come on, do my homework, maybe help my mom at the second job, then get back home and wake up early for the school bus. Hope no one gets shot at. It's kind of different. Gotta wash my sneakers, gotta stay on point. My bedtime's like at 11 p.m. People in the suburbs going to bed at 8 o'clock. The wealth of kings, the cycle of bread. The wine of my bosom, the fruit of my loins, the years of my youth. We do foolish things in our youth. We reach an age, and around the age of 6 or 7, kids start getting a little bit hip. They figure out how to lie, don't they? And nobody teaches a child how to lie. They just know how to do it. They're just savvy like that. This is the knowledge that we didn't have. Nobody taught them how to lie. Nobody told you how to lie. You didn't read no instruction manual. Tree of good and evil. How did you learn that? You learned how to not tell the truth. And you found that the word for that was called a lie. You learned that in your youth. And what happens when you learn how to lie? In tough situations where mother is struggling and father is struggling, oftentimes single parent homie. What lines the streets and the pockets of those saggy pants? Shoe boxes under beds. Cracks in the walls in the houses. Stashes where the pots and the pans are. It's a lot of knowledge there. It's a lot of lies also. We don't really want to do it. We just do it because we kind of got to get by. Society has pressed it on our back. Cain and Abel happens every single day. In certain societies. And everybody looks away because business is good. The stock market is soaring. Nobody's asking any questions. Just hang around the rotten apple. You can ask it in the New Yorker. It's a silent topic. A lot of things happen. From silent topics in the inner cities to silent auctions. The wealth of kings and the cycle of bread. In the years of your youth, you become kind of reckless also. You meet some friends at school and most of them got bad ideas and you don't want to be left out of it. So you go along. What happened to the wine of my bosom? And what is the power of influence? Single parent working 2 jobs, child raised by television. By high school, he got a lot of friends and a girlfriend also. She just turned 17 and she found out that she's 3 months pregnant. Uh-oh, guess I gotta tell Mom. That would break her back more. We got inflation and food stamps. We could barely buy milk from the store. The king's table is getting wider year by year with all those fucking bonuses. Is it necessarily bad for someone to have a lot of money? No. But to have love for it is completely different. To not recognize others and other situations and circumstances with the mentality that I did it so they can do it. And the truth is, the circumstances that they've been in, they could do it 20 times better with their eyes closed. And they know the economy better than you. And they could change the stock market. But nobody's listening. Outside, you open the window, little Johnny, 6-year-old, he could hear the bullet whispering. Then he was sleeping. Life was a sentence. Obituary reading that Johnny was gifted. But he didn't have presents at Christmas because nobody gave a fuck about it. Something to think about. So, the howls of my thoughts. What howls against the truth? Temptations. It's not exactly a lie. It is something that you could possibly do. You ever hear the wind rushing by the window pane and it makes a howling noise? You don't know from whence it came, but you can hear it, but you can't see it or nothing otherwise. Such are the thoughts that devour the flowers in the soil of your mind, which are fruits of truth. The wisdom of your bosom, your heart, sprouting in your brain, and then the howls of your thoughts come to devour those flowers. And your mind becomes a barren wasteland. And now your heart and your brain don't connect together. You got two different natures. All seeing eye with one eye out. Driving down the street with one headlight out. Though I'm targeted, they would see me as a perp. I couldn't even pass inspection. And the ones that are targeted would look at me like a cop. Some of y'all will get that, some of y'all will not. Not if you're not targeted. But the fact of the matter is I'm annotating the all-seeing eye. The asymmetrical side of life. The face we put on when we go outside. Not the one we take off when we go to bed or pray at night. It's a little bit different. Some people live with that mask on. So that's the howls of my thoughts, or the temptations that devour the good understanding and the good wisdom that you receive from the wine of your father's bosom. Whether that be your physical father or your spiritual father that is in heaven if you're a Christian. The next line is the dread of the countess. Well, that kind of goes to like those high courts and things of this nature. And the power that is in the feminine principle. It's very dangerous. Women are very dangerous in many different ways. War comes in many different forms. Love is a particular thing, so is hate. Some of them really fall in love, some of them spread for favors. And how does that fuck up a man's psychology? One that has a lot of power. A lot of the war started. I won't even go there. The dread of the countess. She wants and lusts after things according to her whimsical nature because she's led by her emotions. Though she is powerful, she wants other types of power, now more in the masculine. And I think it's interesting that she wants to be respected as a feminist, but then be kind of moving backwards. I just don't get it. Nothing is new under the sun. This has happened before. The cycle of bread. Things move in cycles. Christmas Day, your child walks down, he can see the train set. You ain't doing shit different. This is something to think about, man. The power of a woman in high court. In society. All the way back from old times. Sorcerers, witches, covens, things of this nature. How they influence society. Of all the rituals that they do, it is the psychology performed on a man's mind that is the most dangerous. The motivation to move things. A woman could move more weight than I could move way more easy. She could just ask a bigger dude, hey, I need this refrigerator put in my house. Don't you know that they'll trip over logs to do it? She tell one lie and 30 people will seek to come out and kill me. It's the truth. It happens every day. Now imagine rulers and empires. That could cause a lot of bloodshed. What is she after? And as soon as she gets it, she turns her head the other way. She wants something else. It wasn't what she was looking for. Don't act like you ain't seen it. I'm just an honest Negro. Hey, I just look like this. This is the dread of the Countess. It's a woman who is ran by her emotions. All right? That is ran by her emotions. It's okay to have a little bit of logic also. But when it's all emotions, then it kind of gets into turmoil, and then your mind is like a tornado. Kind of hard to find myself. Some of y'all should think about it. The discretion of the horde, the board of education, the rivers of my veins, the circuitry of currency. The discretion of the horde is the secrets we keep for the cycle of the bread. I won't go any further. Many of y'all can save y'all head. I'll spare the guillotine today. The discretion of the horde, the board of education. Many of these institutions are ran by a board, and many of these boards are dispersed into different boards. And they come up with plans and ideas, and they may not even be a corporation. They just might be a think tank. I'll spare the guillotine today. Y'all know what I'm hitting at, and if you don't know, then you're a little too slow, and that's okay. Just meditate a little. The board of education. What is education? What is the sign for scholastic or Apple products? An apple with a bite mark out of it. Tree of knowledge. Let's talk about it. Then again, that's the secret, and that secret is the discretion of the horde. And I won't speak of it. I'll spare the guillotine today. The rivers of my veins, the circuitry of currency. The rivers of my veins. It's the blood running through my veins. And my veins are like road maps throughout my body. Much like a city, the circuitry of currency. Cash rules everything around me, and it kind of flows down from the heart to my extremities. Now we figure out tax brackets and demographics and places where people work in. Slight conversations between a male and a female. And the first thing she want to know is what car does she drive and where does he work. Seems like she's working for the CIA, but nobody knows who she was. The dread of the Countess. Something to think about. Things superficial. They want that and they want love, but that comes first. I get it. All of them want to be princesses. And for those niggas who want a princess, I say, run, Forrest, run far away. That's a monster. The dread of the Countess, she'll devour you. And every flower that you have planted in the soil of your head. And they will be quick to say that's chauvinist. And then I'll point to their emotions. And then they'll shut the fuck up and drink a tall glass of water. So, this is the rivers of my veins, because getting in between that currency, infidelity, divorce rates, a lot of it boils down to that money. Not what happened to the love and consideration and the intuition in the relationship. You see, it becomes quite superficial when it comes down to that money, and the money's at the top of that chapel, but it wasn't there when they were taking their vows in, so nobody can make a sound. That's a gunshot. Look at them bodies on the ground. Somebody limping down the block with half of their back out, carrying the dope bags, running from the cops, and both of their lives is on the line, and you could hear the sirens like mermaids whistling down the street as the sound is drowning out, and you're limping down the block, and your heartbeat slowing down because you're running and your blood is racing from all the adrenaline. Cain and Abel. The rivers of my veins, the circuitry of currency is one and the same, kinda. The arteries of the city, the chapters of my keep, the streets bathed in blood. The arteries of the city, the main lines of where that money is, or where that money comes from. And I'll just leave it there. The chapters of my keep, the book of my testimony, the days of my life, and who keeps the records of the obituaries, the detectives that go and look at the library cards to figure out the names of the victims and where was the last place that they went, and their school attendances, the records, the streets bathed in blood. Everybody's after the bag. It's like one big ass game of Monopoly, and since the Mandela effect, that nigga lost his monocle, and I don't think anybody noticed. Must have came through Easy Street and got stuck up. Something to think about. Cain and Abel in them inner cities, and it goes all the way up. And in the corporate lives, don't think it's any different. Business is cutthroat. The king's table is growing bigger every year with bread and wine. How many people got cut out of their salaries? How many grudges are in between? And this is fueled through family bloodlines. And he heard Abel's voice cry up from the ground. God, after Cain slew Abel, heard Abel's voice cry out of his blood from the ground. I gave testimony, a record of what happened. And it's written that the soul lieth in the blood. DNA equal information. Forensics follow that DNA. Sometimes they be finding semen. Sometimes on the counter ledgers. This shit be kind of crazy. And God heard Abel's voice cry up from the ground. Forensics. Follow the paper trail is what they say. Now this could go in a whole nother dimension also. But like I said, I ain't going there right now. So, we'll get back to that. That's the end of that point. We're going to read this verse and break this down. This is Proverbs chapter 30, verse 10. Accuse not a servant unto his master, lest he curse thee, and thou be found guilty. A lot of people nowadays, without, people are doing good now. They're starting to fact check. I'm real happy about that. People weren't doing that shit before, man. And when you don't fact check and you got a whole bunch of rumors running around, and you got a bunch of people that is moving shifty or kind of, you know what I'm saying, in one way or the other, they could be just sloppy. They could be rookies. They could be dry snitching. There could be a whole lot of things going on. And this is not me validating anybody's credibility, but in the 90s the streets were a lot more tight-knit, and I think a lot of things got sloppier. They did, and that's from the bottom to the top. You gotta fact check. Even these people who do, corporate jobs and things of this nature, you gotta fact check. Don't worry about the paper trail. What you do is you follow the truth. All right. Let somebody keep their emotions and extract the facts out of what they're saying and work from there and build a skeleton. Then you could understand how somebody might have felt about the facts, getting a perspective of their perception on a certain situation that would garner a motive. All right. Anybody could use that. But the fact of the matter is, what it's talking about here is accuse not a servant unto his master. Meaning, if I see something shifty with somebody, then I go to that individual instead of going to their keeper. But of course, the main line of what it's saying is, do not accuse. Don't be accusing people. Make sure you know what it is before you say something. All right? Do due diligence. Do your best to do diligence before then. Or ask a question. Hey, man, I noticed you did this. Like, did you mean this by this? Because it was looking kind of off. Right? Accuse not a servant unto his master, lest he curse thee. All right? Now, you go and you go talk to the boss and you say somebody did something. And then that boss does what? He talked to HR, and HR fact check it, right? And then they fact check it. And then they find out that you was lying. You going to the guillotine. That's what's going to happen to you, right? So what you could have even there's people who accuse sometimes who have good intentions, but a lot of times there's so many busybodies you can't tell the difference. Somebody don't got time for all that extra activity. They're just going to take you to the guillotine, right? So instead, you know what I'm saying, ask questions. Ask questions. That's all you got to do. If it's something that really bothers you, ask questions, or if you have understanding of that, that's different. But make sure you have somewhat of a firm, solid foot. Don't just directly go out and accuse somebody, because that's going to put you in the boiling pot. I see a lot of that on YouTube. YouTube is hella messy right now. All right. There is a generation that curseth their father and doth not bless their mother. All right. This generation are like Ninevites. All right. Now, there was a time when God sent Jonah out to preach to the Ninevites. He did so, and the Ninevites came unto understanding of God's word, and they were rejoicing it so much so that they forgot to teach their children, and their children were worse than they were. As generations go, time after time, especially like with hyperinflation, what we got going on right now, parents are not able to spend as much time with their children, so they don't get the wine of the bosom as much. They don't get the wisdom or as much attention. So they have a lot of time left to themselves to be raised by TV or all the sloppy stuff or the toxic media on YouTube. And all of that goes into their mind, and it sprouts and it develops their character. You know what I'm saying? So that generation, if that happens over generations, then all of a sudden those generations, you know, if you go down 3 generations, those children are growing up and being, I don't know how else to say this, worse, more neglectful parents, and the children are being more neglectful to their parents. They're growing apart. All right, and they're at odds. And the children, when the children start getting to the point where they're cursing their parents, their mother or their father, if they don't have respect for their mother or father that's feeding them or taking care of them or put a roof over their head, you know, they're going to be quick to cut you. All right, that's something to think about. There is a generation that are pure in their own eyes, and yet is not washed from their filthiness. All right. There's a generation, there are people that walk around, this is where I talk about the narcissism. They believe that they're on top of their game, and that's all they're worried about is being on top of their game. What do I mean by that? You know, what type of clothes they wear, you know, their hygiene, all this stuff. Now, hygiene is important, I ain't gonna front, but I'm saying to things that really matter, there's a lot of superficiality anymore, and people are lacking in principles, you know, and morals. And when you have that, you get a degradation of society overall, and it's going to fall out, you know, even in tax brackets, even up into the suburbs and higher,
It's just that they're going to move in a certain type of way of secrecy, but it's going to be messy as hell. Okay, there's going to be a degradation of society. So, and when you confront these people on their ways, they're gonna get upset with you. They're gonna be like, why are you checking me? Why are you doing that? And you could literally be looking out for someone, giving them advice for their own betterment, not because you trying to tell them what to do or anything else. Like you doing some extra stuff to make sure that they don't get hurt or something like that, because you might know a little bit more about something or have experience with something where you're saying, look, like that right there, you don't want to exactly do that. You could mess yourself up real bad. You could mess yourself up real bad doing that, right? Them kids, they're not gonna be listening because they don't listen to their parents. They ain't gonna listen to it because they're gonna walk to the own beat of their own drum. They're gonna do what they want to do. Individuality is good, but it also has its limits. All right. And when it runs into narcissism and everybody going their own way and only care about themselves, that's the degradation of society and civilization as a whole. All right, that's what that verse is about. Pure in their own eyes, and yet is not washed from their own filthiness, right? So, yeah, that's that narcissism. Everything external, everything only about looks. All right, remember the fruit in the Garden of Eden. Look to make one wise. In other words, how they view themselves. They are not self-aware in order to understand themselves or how they're conducting themselves, right? So that's another element to that as well. There's a generation, oh, how lofty are their eyes, and their eyelids are lifted up. You know, a lot of the times, kids growing up, you know what I'm saying, according to how they're raised, they may start, you know what I'm saying, wanting things. You know what I'm saying? I was a very blessed kid. I'm not gonna lie, man. Like I had a Christmas list and everything. You know, I was very blessed. But it's not like that for everyone. You know what I'm saying? And from any tax bracket, from any level of civilization, you know, those children start, you know, wanting and wanting and wanting. You know what I'm saying? And if those needs are not met, they might go about their own ways to achieve that goal without much supervision. And how they're going about things is pure in their own eyes. All right, you know what I'm saying? You gotta think, get rich or die trying. You gotta think about. I understand where 50 Cent is coming from, but when you get into like mentalities or people that's just like liking to hear the beat of the song or something like that, they're not understanding the mentality of work. The main thing that he's talking about pertains to that is work. It takes work and sacrifice to get there, right? Younger generation, not connected with their parents or doesn't have any type of communal support. A lot of times they're not understanding that. They're going to hear more of the entertainment or things that sound entertainment or that go with image. Okay, that more so go with image that would make them look cool. All right, make them look cool or set them up in a certain type of way. And a lot of times when they want to be set up a certain type of way, it only pertains to their look, right? Having the right fashion, having the right shoes, having a cool looking car. All these things at the end of the day are very superficial without any regard for their life and the principles of life whatsoever, right? Being pure in their own eyes because their image looks right. All right. There is a generation whose teeth are as sword and their jaw teeth as knives to devour poor from off the earth and needy from among men. This is talking about people that are in higher tax brackets, people who call people who are poor what they call us, fucking wasteful eaters or something like that. They got all kind of crazy terms for us, man. But it's like our circumstances are different. We have to get very crafty and creative with how we get down and how we do things. We gotta grow up through. We have to get through the concrete, right? We're not directly planted in the soil like everyone else, right? So it's different. It's rough. It's cutthroat from day one. And when you have that and you have a society like that, then ultimately a lot of times the people that are poor, they get taken advantage of. Or people who have less prestige in society
or certain hierarchies of society, you know, they get oppressed and pressed down. They get taken advantage of. They get their work stolen, and other people get credit for their work. The whole nine happens to them. All right. So when this happened, these are like the teeth being as swords. They're being eaten like food. They are being devoured. Their ways of life. They're any type of chance they have to earn a living, any type of freedoms that they had, any type of freedom of speech. They're getting asphyxiated. They're getting choked off the land. All right, they're getting severed by the generation off of the streets for and what does that do? That frees up currency, doesn't it? So salaries get bigger. What does it take for someone's salary to get bigger? Somebody got to get screwed over, or a company's got to be very blessed. That salary is a guaranteed pay, no matter the performance. So that's something you have to think about, right? Some things have to get shifted. Some things have to be done. Some sacrifices, like get rich or die trying, work and sacrifices is regarded. Some sacrifices have to be made, in other words, because supply and demand is a thing, and that's what makes the properties of wealth have value. Is if, you know what I'm saying, something is in high demand, it's going to have a greater value. Okay. The horse leech have two daughters crying, give, give. There are three things that are never satisfied. Yeah, four things say not, it is enough. All right. This is talking about the horse leech having two daughters. If you look at any old school, like at the old school, like vampire images, he always had, like, you know, two divas with him, grabbing onto his leg, screeching, always wanting more blood. Okay. And here, you know what I'm saying, Solomon is about to outline, you know, what the four things are that never have enough, that is considered as the horse leech. Okay. Here it is. The grave. Okay. Because the earth is never full of bodies. Okay. The earth is never full of bodies, you know, and therefore it's just like a bottomless, in a way it is as a bottomless pit. Let me just put it that way, because it is never full of bodies. There's always more space for a body to go in the earth somehow, mysteriously. Look how long we're in 2022. All right. People are dying every single day. There's always space to bury a body, isn't it? All right. Something to think about. So here it is. The grave and the barren womb. All right. Why it says and the barren womb is because the grave and the barren womb are equative to a certain degree. That human vessels are made out of carbonite, or the dust of the field. So the barren womb is when people are just getting down constantly with no plans ever to have children. Okay. That is the barren womb. They're in a situation of perpetual lust and never in a terms to procreate or give life. So therefore, the barren womb consists of materia, and it's never full, if you understand what I'm saying. So I'm gonna leave it at that. All right. The grave and the barren womb. The earth that is not filled with water. So primarily when it said the grave is quite precise in connotating where it is hitting at, right? And that is also connotative of the earth, right? Directly, because the grave is, you just think of the earth, like a hole in the earth, right? The barren womb, which is like the earth again. Interesting. Think about that. Mother Nature, right? You Wiccans, Mother Nature, you don't even know what you work and where you will end. That is it. What you consist of will be required of you again, and what you work will affect you also, being that you are made of the substance of which you seek to manipulate on an elemental level. Something to think about. All right, you see that? All right, so the grave and the barren womb, the earth that is not filled with water. Okay, The bare womb gets water, but it doesn't create anything. So there's something interesting about the bare womb. But then there's also something interesting about the earth that is not filled with water. We all have all these oceans, rivers, streams, creeks. We have all of that, right? And they have a circuitry to them, don't they? Like the veins of the city that follow currency, there is a natural circuitry, and that is the water, the hydration of the field, right? And it generally never overflows, right? I mean, yeah, we have floods and things like that sometimes, but if you think about all the water that is around us, right? The earth is never full of that water. There's always that is a mystery. That is a mystery to understand. Think about that. That river has a starting place, a destination. Sometimes it comes from the ocean. It goes through the earth, and then it goes to a different place, a different stream or something like that in earth. But neither of those places are full, and it has a direct path that it goes. The streams flow a certain direction, no matter the wind, doesn't it? That's interesting. There's something to it. The earth that is not filled with water, and the fire that saith not, it is enough. Fire. You ever see them forest fires when it's blazing, it's burning down the land, and it's never a situation where that fire is just like, oh, it's gonna burn out on its own. No, a lot of work that's got a lot. It takes a lot of lives, the whole nine. The fire is never the fire is never quenched. All right. All of these things are connotative of the earth, and also as a double entendre, the elements of mankind, the elements of creature that are made of the dust of the field or of the carbonite. The fire representing the desires of man that are never quenched for the entire duration of his life. The water that you drink and the hydration you take is of your entire life. And you are never full of it for some reason. You see what I'm saying? The grave that is never full, which is like your belly also, and the fire that the digestion, the hydrochloric acid that digests that food. All right? The barren womb, okay? All the things that go down, all right, with no intentions whatsoever to lead to something else beyond oneself. This would be considered a barren womb, and it is deeply hitting at the intentions of someone that points back to that fire, which is the desire that is never quenched. All right. The eye that mocketh at his father and despiseth to obey his mother. That goes back into that thing. The ravens of the valley shall pick it out, and the young eagles shall eat it. So in other words, the children that despise their parents and the wisdom, okay, the wisdom of their bosom, they will become basically, food of the birds, okay? The crows and the eagles shall pick out their eyes because they did not take heed to understanding. And in them not taking heed to understanding, instructions and information puts people in formation. Information gives them directions, just like a map will give you directions so that you don't say or do certain things that will lead to your end, because the grave is never full. All right. The ravens of the valley shall pick it out. The valley connotates a hardship or troubling times. It's the valley. And when they find themselves, oppressed or in a valley, they shall become the food. Okay? They shall become the food. Okay? Yeah. So that's that. All right. Now I'm jumping forward. There be three things which are too wonderful for me. Yeah, for which I know not. The way of an eagle in the air. The eagle, when it spread its wings and it soars through the air and it just can glide and cut through that air like a knife. It's a beautiful thing to see. And I mean, good grief, that air, that eagle. I think they said the eagle's wingspan on I was probably Discovery or something. It's like 6 feet or something. It's something crazy like that. That's an entire man. That's 6 feet. I'm not even 6 feet tall. That eagle It's that big, and it just glides and cuts through that air and soars. It can soar for so far. All right. He's talking about he's juxtaposition. There be three things which are too wonderful for me, yeah, for which I know not. So he's saying the way of an eagle in the air is beautiful. The way of a serpent upon a rock. You know what I'm saying? How serpents can conceal themselves, you know what I'm saying, right up there, cuddled up next close to the rock to where you don't even see the serpent. It is as if it is camouflage and one with the environment that's around it. It is a part of the environment rather than being separate from the environment. The way of a serpent upon a rock, and when it moves, how it glides across that rock, no different than an eagle in the air. The patterns are quite mirrored. Okay? The way of a ship in the midst of the sea. Okay? The ship in the midst of a sea with the waves. Eagle, serpent, a ship in the midst of the sea and the waves. Is it not quite the same? Does a ship not move or glide across the water? It does. It does. And if the waves be strong enough, they may have to move that ship. They may have to move that ship and it glide through that water a certain type of way that has a wavering pattern, no different than a serpent upon a rock. You see that? You see how those things mirror? And the way of a man with his maid. Now, I ain't gonna get into that, but you know about them ebbs and flows, you know what I'm saying? So these are the things that are beautiful. But he's connotating here, such is the way of an adulterous woman, she eateth and wipeth her mouth, and saith, I have done no wickedness. Now, an adulterous woman, okay, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? This is the dread of the countess. She goes around, she devours the powers of men, and their emotion, those soul ties and broken hearts. It garners much blood and enmity. And she simply says that she has done no wrong. It is that she has taken no consideration for the magnitude of how she has affected individuals in relationships, you know what I'm saying, and lives. And those things clash to come forth, and there are history of these women that is able to bring forth war. This is the dread of the countess that is led by her emotions, that she in herself says, hey, I was just doing my thing. But in you doing your thing, you know you got it going on. You know that man is married. You know what you're working with, right? You know, and it's not to put the blame on the woman, but you got to be honest. There's women, that's how they move. That's how they move. Does she glide across the floor when you see her? Like an eagle in the air, a serpent in a rock, or as a ship in the water? Right? A man, but that's not exactly his mate. Them ebbs and flows, man. Them ebbs and flows, the circuitry. Is her womb not barren? Right? Is that not a secret counsel? Sibba. Right? So I'm just saying, and this is not me pointing any fingers or casting any judgment or casting anyone down. I'm just saying this is about being more conscientious about the relationships that you have, because if you're not conscientious about the relationships you have, those things could cause massive catastrophes that you could never see coming. And if you don't listen to me, the bosom, what is it? The wine of my bosom is right here in Proverbs chapter 30 verse 17. I will reiterate, the eye that mocketh at his father and despiseth to obey his mother, the ravens of the valley shall pick it out, and the young eagles shall eat it. In other words, heed good instruction. Heed good instruction. I'm trying to look out for people. Alright? I really am. According to this word. And I try not to make it boring and just talk to you from the hip. You know what I'm saying? I couldn't be no preacher because I just give it to people straight. You know what I'm saying? But it says right here, Proverbs. Okay? Look. This is Proverbs chapter 31 verse 3.
Give not thy strength unto women, nor thy ways to that which destroyeth kings. All right. So yeah. So basically, the strength. All right. Let's be honest, fellas. I know we think we can hold it down at the fort, right? We could hold it down. You know what I'm saying? We're Bruce Lee on the headboard. We know it, right? We know it. But at the end of the day, soon as that pea-size amount of ointment comes out of your body, you're fucking done. You're done. Your strength is done. She fucking destroyed you better than any MMA fighter could ever do it. You're done. You know what I'm saying? That beat of sweat roll down your face and you're knocked out for like 3 hours. Right? People go down to Colombia. They don't wake up. Everything be missing. You got to be careful out here. Right? So you got to be careful with your strength. What is that saying? What is that saying? That adulterous woman is just may not be reckless in one place. She may be reckless in different type of places. She might got her fingers in all type of things. She might know thieves and things like that. Somebody come in your house, smack you in the head with the butt of a pistol, take all your shit. Right? You be lucky to wake up. It's a real world out here, man. It really is. Right? Give not thy strength unto women. This is not the Bible hating on women. It's like you gotta be wise out here. You gotta be wise, because that right there, that could send you. That is one of the quickest roads that could take you up out of here. There's too much going on. And you know, you ask women, or women can ask you, oh, how many people you been with, right? How many girlfriends have you had? How many boyfriends you had? Both of them lie. Both of them lie. The dude lie and the female lie. They ain't gonna tell you the truth. Bone might come out of there. They can't say shit, right? You gotta be careful, man. King Arthur, that sword's crossed. You gotta be careful. That's your skeleton and crossbones. You on the guillotine, man. You on the guillotine. You gotta be careful. So, give not thy strength unto women, nor thy ways to that which destroyeth kings. Huh? The dread of the countess. Right there. For real. So, you know, that's all I'm gonna get into as far as that. Yeah, and in Ecclesiastes, just this verse real quick, because I like this verse. Chapter 1, verse 14. The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walketh in darkness. And I myself perceived also that one event happeneth to them all. All right, a wise man's eyes are in his head, not on his head, inside his head, his thoughts. Right? He has direction. He has understanding. But the fool walketh in darkness. He's absent-minded. He's not thinking about anything. All right? He doesn't have any understanding. And I myself perceive also that one event happeneth to them all. Then said I in my heart, as it happeneth to the fool, so it happeneth even to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, that this is also vanity, right? When that goes into, when you look at other people that seem like they tripping or they crazy or whatever, don't consider yourself to be so wise, because the wise man will die as a fool, right? They are one and the same. They really are. At the end of the day, it's good to have direction. I mean, as far as the duration of your life, but at the end of the day, the wise man and the fool will both perish. All right. And so it is vanity to do this thing. That is what Solomon is understanding here. But for there is no remembrance of the wise more than the fool. For there is no remembrance of the wise more than of the fool forever. Seeing that which now is in the days to come shall all be forgotten. And how dieth the wise man as the fool? All right, saying how does the wise man die? And the wise man dies as the fool, right? A lot of times that's an interesting thing, because how somebody go out can uncover their wisdom
and cause their, you know what I'm saying, their shame to be revealed. That's why people got to be careful with God, right? Christ came and he gave us a covering, so he covers over our foolish ways. But we're all foolish, and that which makes us wise is the direction and the wisdom. Okay, the wine of my bosom, the wine of the Most High's bosom is wisdom, his spirit, his spiritual wisdom that come through his Holy Spirit, right? It gives us direction. It's a thank you, not that somebody is really wise. We're all foolish. We're all gonna die, right? We're all gonna, and I hate to be like, I'm not trying to be fatalistic, but it's just a known fact. We know what happened in Genesis, right? So he is saying there is no remembrance of the wise more than of the fool forever. The wise man and the fool, they'll both be forgotten. They really will. Okay? So, yeah. That's out of Proverbs. Solomon in scripture, he come with that deep wisdom that is really cool, that I just like to revisit and read from time to time. I'm going to close out by reading this poem one more time, and then I'll get out of here. All right? The wealth of kings, the cycle of bread, the season of change, the victims of poverty, the wine of my bosom, the fruits of my loins, the years of my youth, the howls of my thoughts, the dread of the countess, the discretion of the hoard, the board of education, the rivers of my veins, the circuitry of currency, the arteries of the city, the chapters of my keep, the streets bathed in blood. And he heard Abel's voice cry up from the ground. All right, you guys, peace and blessings be with you all. I'm out.
Hey.